A Barbadian mother and son have both pleaded guilty to trying to smuggle over 5 kilograms of cannabis into the country. However, they have each suffered different fates. Marita Eugene Odell of First Avenue, Weeksland, Goodland in St. Michael, who appeared in the District B Magistrates Court earlier today charged for possession of cannabis, was granted $39,000 bail and is expected to return to court tomorrow for sentencing. Sources tell CBC News this is all pending a pre-sentencing report. Her son, 24-year-old Rico Antonio Odell, who was also arrested and charged for possession of cannabis, has been remanded to Her Majesty's Prison at Dodds to return to court tomorrow for sentencing. Rita and Rico were both arrested and charged separately after arriving on a flight from Canada yesterday. They were stopped separately and interviewed by police. The mother was then referred to customs, where a search of her luggage revealed 5.6 kilograms of cannabis hidden in a false bottom of her suitcase. A similar amount of cannabis was also discovered in a false bottom of the son's suitcase. And 2 Jamaican drug mules have pleaded guilty to ingesting a quantity of cannabis and have been handed a $1,500 forthwith fine or a year at Her Majesty's Prison at Dodds for possession. They are 48-year-old S. Roy Passington Levy and 36-year-old Gladstone Jeffrey Ellis. Both men were interviewed by police after clearing customs. Levy was referred to a medical facility where he passed out 29 packages containing cannabis weighing half a pound. Ellis passed 13 packets containing cannabis weighing a quarter of a pound. Amendments to the Offences Against the Persons Act will be brought before Parliament at the end of April. And Attorney General Adriel Brathwaite expects this will spark renewed discussion on the death penalty. 9 men are on death row at Her Majesty's Prison Dodds, and the last hanging in Barbados was in 1984. The AG was speaking to the media after addressing this year's participants in the annual Boys to Men project sponsored by the National Task Force on Crime Prevention at the 3Ws Oval. Mr. Brathwaite said changes to the act follow a ruling by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. This ruling indicated that the mandatory death sentence imposed on those convicted of murder in Barbados violates the right to life as it is arbitrary and fails to limit the application of the death penalty to the most serious crimes. The court considered that the Offence Against the Persons Act automatically imposes the death penalty on those found guilty of murder and fails to impose the sentence based on the characteristics of the crime.
You would only have the death penalty imposed under certain circumstances. So if the perpetrator attacks a juror or the lawyer or the prosecutor or the judge, etc., those are the areas where we're saying that in fact the death penalty should be imposed. But the norm now, which is that once the guy has been found guilty of murder, then the hanging is automatic, and that disappears.
The Attorney General says national debate is important for the country to determine the way forward in relation to the death penalty.
The general feeling in Barbados seems to be, my sense is that Barbadians seem to believe that, in fact, that once someone has committed a murder, that in fact that they should forfeit their lives. But that only applies when your family member is not involved. You know, in other words, when the person charged is not related to you, when the person charged is related to you, then you see a different side of the coin. And we're going to have that discussion again as a country, whether it's the right answer, whether or not in 2014 that a country like ours, that should be the norm.
Barbados tourism is at a crossroad, and the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association wants both public and private sector entities to support this important sector. Instead of withholding support to protect their own interests, BHTA President Patricia Afonso Das wants focus placed on the much larger and more important need for a stronger, vibrant and sustainable accommodation sector and tourism industry. The BHTA head wants to hear from government with respect to their calls for a level playing field on concessions.
The end of January is behind us, and while we have been given continued assurance by the Ministers of Finance and Tourism that the matter is receiving favorable consideration, we have not been provided with a final position on the matter. Over the past 3 months, we have worked assiduously and in cooperation with the government, allowing them the time and space to consider our requests, have provided supporting documentation and statistical information when requested, have had numerous meetings with the Ministers of Finance and Economic Affairs and the Minister of Tourism and International Transport, and more recently, the Minister of Commerce.
Ms. Afonso Das, while addressing the first quarterly report of the BHTA at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Centre, says the tourism industry cannot be a tax cow. She wants incentives put in place that would encourage investments, growth, and improve visitor numbers. The BHTA boss welcomed recent moves by Britain to level the air passenger duty tax bans following years of concerted lobbying. She says Barbados stands to benefit.
We look forward to a positive impact on our arrivals out of the UK. The Minister, in his 10-point plan last year, had indicated that he would look to pay the APD for UK passengers. This is no longer necessary, and we would hope that those funds would be diverted to more productive marketing efforts. I wish to go on public record thanking all who were involved in making this happen.
Government is moving to address the vulnerabilities of small island developing states as part of its strategies to return Barbados to growth. And according to Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Senator Darcy Boyce, food security, climate change, and the issue of energy are being given priority. He made the comments in the upper chamber on day 2 of the estimates debate in the Senate, while strongly supporting them.
The matter of energy vulnerability. Second was the vulnerability to natural disasters. Thirdly, the vulnerability on environmental matters and climate change and sea level rise and so on. But Madam President, we also have other vulnerabilities. The vulnerability on food supply, the vulnerability on water and sewage. And Madam President, we have also vulnerability because we import so much of what we consume.
Senator Boyce also rejected suggestions that the DLP is a spendthrift administration. He used a comparative analysis of figures showing the increase in goods and services, wages and salaries, and current transfers between 2001 and 2013 to emphasize his point. He also rejected suggestions that the tax burden on Barbadians has increased, and this is despite government and running an increased deficit. Senator Boyce also says Barbados needs more brand name hotels to complement current room stocks and increase airlift.
What is happening in tourism is of real significance, tremendous importance to this country, because that will generate jobs and it will generate more foreign exchange. And we all want the jobs. Just that we don't want all the jobs to come out of the government sector, because the economy cannot afford it. We have to get more jobs coming out of the private sector. And the way to get that happening is to get, one of the ways to get our tourism sector doing more. And so, Madam President, the construction that will take place herewith is welcome. Very welcome. Because that construction doesn't have to take place at the cost of destroying Ammon. We can find in Barbados a proper place also for Ammon.
Senator Boyce has also disclosed that licenses will shortly be issued by government for oil and gas exploration off Barbados. But he says bringing oil to the surface so the island can benefit will take about another 5 to 6 years. He says new licenses in the power generation sector should be forthcoming from May, adding that an ocean thermal energy conversion plant is also on the cards. Well, a government senator is warning the opposition about trying to stir up riots in Barbados. Senator Reginald Hunt is telling the Barbados Labour Party that their attempts could bring down the entire economy to a point of no return. He pointed to events in Thailand to support his argument. He told the upper chamber that Thailand has seen a dramatic decline in a once booming economy, the result of continued unrest in that Asian country.
That all the talk about bringing people on the streets to demonstrate and to probably do other things is a dangerous trend. Because if you think that you're losing, you will lose all. It's a dangerous thing to try to incite people.
Curb spending, cut and contrive, and reduce consumption. These suggestions from Independent Senator Professor Henry Fraser in his contribution to the estimates debate yesterday. He says Barbados has passed the point of offering stimulus packages to get the economy growing again, and job cuts are now inevitable.
The economists are not telling us with any consensus what we should do. So we've got to cut the waste, we've got to cut jobs, and meanwhile we've got to initiate productive efforts. These are the realities. It is no sense pretending that we cannot cut, must not cut, or will not cut. The longer that position is taken, the worse our situation will be.
The University of the West Indies is helping to retrain and retool some of the recently retrenched workers from both the public and private sectors. Help is on the way through an entrepreneurship clinic, which head of the Department of Management Studies, Dr. Fillmore Allen, says will be held in the coming months.
This is what we consider as an attempt to retool these employees, especially in the area of entrepreneurship. I'd like to inform you that all of these efforts are attempts by DOMS to help national development, which is the subject of this afternoon's public discussion. I wish to inform you further that the university has over the past 50 years been playing an integral part in the development of the country and the region.
At last evening's panel discussion, representatives of the National Union of Public Workers and the private sector looked at government and the private sector, redefining the role of the public and private sector in national development. Former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Teresa Marshall, says the systems and structures of government have run their course and are archaic.
In terms of what needs to be done to make us competitive in the new economy. If you look carefully at the structures in our public service, they date back to colonial times, where the few at the top were educated and 75% or more took instructions and carried out procedures.
Chairman of the Barbados Private Sector Association, Alex MacDonald, suggests the island will not be the same after the current economic crisis.
We will then refer to it in the 1976, 82, 91, 2013, 14 years. How well we actually change and develop new structures will mean that that will be the last time we speak about it in that same light. Are we doing the right things? Time and history will actually tell. But I think there are among us people who feel within their core that we're not actually doing the right things at the right time for the right result.
The local credit union movement has been encouraged to look at the way it offers loans to members in a more developmental way. The call has come from Minister of Industry, International Business, Commerce and Small Business Development, Donville Innes. At the time he was delivering the feature address at the Barbados Light and Power Employees Cooperative Credit Union's annual general meeting.
It is therefore important that we encourage our membership to see their credit unions not as a place primarily for borrowing money, but as a vehicle for them to improve their livelihood through a philosophy of financial independence, financial discipline, and borrowing for productive purposes, including creation of self-employment opportunities.